we did this story largely based on information that you had amassed and collected on Nick Pope. And I wanted to get your sense, all over the United States media, they always say Nick Pope ran a British UFO program. And I believe they do that falsely based on his own claims. And we've shared a lot of the stuff that you've collected over the years that seems to indicate he just answered the phone. He didn't investigate anything. I mean, what is your take on that? And what is the perception in England? When he's called the British UFO expert in the United States, what do people in England say? Do they know that this is all a LARP?
I mean, Nick has his followers, and I understand that, but most people in the know here know it's not true. But you don't have to believe me or you. You can just go to the Ministry of Defence and they will tell you. You can check all their files have been released to the public into our National Archives, and that's where I got the documents from. I haven't pulled these out from pulled a rabbit out of a hat with MOD documents. They're all there. Anybody can see them. They're not top secret. And I'm one of the guys that used to bug Nick Pope when he was actually at the MOD.
Yeah, that's interesting, is that some of those documents you're aware is him and his handwriting, even though his name is redacted because he was working there at the time, and that was you asking the questions that generated those documents.
Yeah, the thing about Nick, he was different to his predecessors and those that came after him. He was just much more helpful. He didn't have to be. This wasn't MOD policy. It was just him as a personality.
And don't you think that maybe, look, he was just interested in UFOs before he worked there. So once he's in a position where people are calling, talking about UFOs, he feels like he's investigating. But I think the word investigating to me doesn't mean you answer the phone and then you forward it to, what is that section? There was a certain section.
There is another department, or there was, it's not there now, and it's called DI 55, Defence Intelligence 55. Yes. They dealt with a lot of things, but basically when UFO reports went into Nick's department, which is called the Secretariat, Air Staff.
Yeah, and Philip was nice enough to even send me the definition of Secretariat so that I would know.
It's admin. It's administration.
Yeah, and I had mentioned that I worked at one corporate place where 4 or 5 of us guys that were working there had one admin assistant, and they did things like go get me a file, answer the phone.
Well, what Nick would do when they got a report in, he would copy in various departments, the main one being DI 55.
Who actually investigated the stuff, though, right?
On occasion
they did.
You're talking a handful of times per year, but all they were looking at, Steve, was to see if these reports were enemy aircraft. In other words, the Russians.
If it's a defense problem, they're interested. If it's not, they're not interested.
And they've openly said that from day one. I mean, that was MOD policy across the board. On occasion, they would look into certain reports and they would conduct an investigation. But they didn't tell Nick Pope the results because he was too far down the ladder.
You're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know.
These guys were well above him. I'll give you an example. There is a Ministry of Defence, I'll call it, a report, a study, and it's called Project Condign, and it was done by a chap called Dr. Harrow. Now, when you read the Condign report, you won't find his name on it. There's no author's name on it. And it basically looked at what they were calling then UAPs. And it was published internally. It was classified to begin with, I think in the year 2000. Because it was classified, Nick Pope's department didn't get a copy. They were not on the circulation list.
So he was so far down in the chain, he didn't even get classified internal documents about UFOs.
Now, Project Condign is a lengthy report. Dr. Ron Haddow was a lifelong MOD guy. I think he started off as a pilot in the 50s, and his conclusion was that these were unknown balls of plasma that may affect aircraft, etc., etc. But that doesn't matter. The fact was, Pope's department wasn't even copied in. It was Dr. David Clarke who found out about the Condon report and got it released under the Freedom of Information Act.
And see, to me, that right now, what you're talking about is very telling, because this man, Nick Pope, claims that he ran the British UFO program. If he did, he would be given access to these reports and these internal documents as the head of a UFO program. But everything that I've looked at seems to indicate there was people that were in charge of investigating, but you're right, only when they felt it may be related to a defense issue.
Yes.
And also, Nick Pope, on the record, in a previous bio on his website, claimed that he investigated alien abductions, crop circles, and cattle mutilations for the British government. But we have from the British Ministry of Defense a letter confirming that they have never investigated alien abductions, crop circles, or cattle mutilations. There he's lying, and he's never investigated.
You also have some correspondence by Nick Pope himself saying, there are no crop circle reports in the MOD files. And then there's another document written by Nick himself saying that the kind of reports that the chap who'd written to him are talking about, i.e. close encounters, they don't tend to receive. And he actually advises the correspondent to contact some civilian UFO groups, and he lists them.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, because if he was, it's all about perceptions. He puts out this perception, or he wants people to have the perception that he was some kind of British Fox Mulder, and he ran out into the field and investigated crop circles and alien abductions. And it's very clear that they didn't investigate. That's not a defense issue. They had no interest in investigating them. No, but it's unfortunate, but like we have a very similar parallel here in the United States, because you've got Nick Pope saying, I ran the British UFO program. I was the head of it. And then we find out, no, you didn't. And that didn't exist. You were a secretary. And in the United States, we've got Elizondo saying that he ran a $22 million UFO program that we now know never existed and was not funded.
Yeah, well, I always say, look, you don't have to believe me. The documents that I'm talking about, I've shared some with you, Steve. Yeah, they're all available in the MOD files. And I don't know if they are now, but during the pandemic, all these files, you could download them free of charge.
Yeah, and I thank you, because I had pieces of that puzzle, but Philip Mantle had a collection. He had a whole collection, and I put up most of them in a Google Drive link. After this broadcast ends, I'll put the Google Drive link to all the evidence and proof that Nick Pope never ran a UFO program for the British Mod. Will be right there in black and white for you.
So you've had people coming to me saying, well, you're just jealous of Nick Pope.
I've heard that. And I can see how people could assume that, because you're both British. I said, look, I have my own little niche, whatever you want to call it. I am quite happy with where I am. I love doing what I do. You didn't lie to people about your jobs to get there.
I said I left school with no qualifications. I have none. I mean, zilch. I worked in a factory, and I'm proud of that. I was a factory worker.
My family's all blue collar union.
I was a trade union representative. I was well trained by the trade union, and then I took seriously ill. And I had to, after a couple of years, I had to find an office job. Like I said, I ended up working for the Halifax Bank, and I'm very grateful. It saw my daughter through university and paid the bills. 10 years after I had the heart attack, I went down with heart failure. That nearly flaming killed me. And I've had other heart problems. So I've been in and out of hospital. So there is no way I could run around like Nick Pope does. So I'm not jealous. It's nothing personal. Nick spoke at one of the conferences I helped organize. He stayed in my house as a guest.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is that obviously this man has an intense passion and interest for these subjects. I just think where he went wrong is overstating and embellishing and fabricating a story for his background that would then get him more bookings, more fame, more money.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for me. It's a real problem for me.
Yeah. I think it's sad.
If he hadn't said any of that stuff and faked stuff in his background or claimed that he investigated things he clearly never investigated for the British government, if he had just said, like you, Philip, I'm just a citizen of the UK. I'm very interested in these subjects. I've been researching them for 20 years or whatever. I would be much more agreeable to listening to him and to.
Yeah, I think what Nick's job actually did. Bearing in mind, some guy wrote to the Ministry of Defence and said, "How can I apply for the job?" And they said, "Well, it's internal." And they sent him. They said, "Well, what does it entail?" So they sent him a list of what it entails, and it's all admin tasks. That's all it is. Other things that Nick never talks about.
And what people don't realize too is that a lot of his job was that administrative and secretarial. Like a British airplane is, let's say a British airplane is going to fly to Poland. They need a place to land. They need clearance to land. There's paperwork that needs to be done. That's what he did.
It's the civil service. Politicians come and go, but you can have a job in the civil service for all your life. And he did indeed spend 21 years in it, and he took early retirement. And he is a nice guy. He's very affable.
I'm affable.
But if you're on the wrong side of him, that's different. And
based on the sock puppet accounts that are currently attacking me on Twitter, I think I got on his wrong side. And it's always interesting to me. I don't know if you know this, Philip, but every time, at least here on this show, when we show people the truth about one of these characters in conspiracy land, suddenly a brand new nameless, faceless Twitter account comes at me on Twitter to defend their honor and tell me how wrong I am. It's never a real person that defends them once they're revealed to be the frauds or the liars that I believe they are. It's always a fake, brand new Twitter account.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just the way it is. And I've said, look, you don't have to believe me.
Read the documents. Yeah.
You asked for them, Steve, and I sent you them. I think they were there the same day or the next day. And
absolutely.
Make of them what you will. And but that's it. Like I said, don't believe me. Go to the ministry, and people will say, "Well, you can't believe the Ministry of Defence."
Yeah, because the Men in Black covered up his investigation.
Hang on a minute. Yeah. Hang on a minute here. You can't believe the Ministry of Defence, but you want to believe a former Ministry of Defence employee.
Yes.
Come on. It doesn't quite work that way. But people don't want to have their illusions shattered. They think there's some secret department in the MOD has been up to all this, that, and the other. And if there is, we haven't found it. We do know that DI-50. I'll tell you how we found out about DI-55. It goes back a long time, Steve. We would write letters to the Ministry of Defence trying to get access to this, that, and the other. More often than not, we failed. But it was my colleague, Jenny Randalls, who'll notice on a letter that I'd got from the MOD their distribution list.
That's interesting. So they screwed up.
Yeah, and it wasn't me. It was written to me, but I hadn't noticed it. Jenny noticed it. She said DI-55. She then started to look into where the hell, who's this DI-55? And then we found out. It took a long time, but they're gone now. That department is dissolved. It may have another name, move somewhere. Pope's department again was closed in 2009. So you can't get any set. If you write to the Ministry of Defence, it's forwarded on to someplace somewhere else. They don't even reply themselves anymore. And they are genuinely not interested. People don't believe it. They're genuinely not. They openly said.
Unless it's a defence issue, then they're interested. Yeah.
They've openly said, however far back you go, that's it. They look at it just from a defence point of view. They've always admitted that there are things in the air that they can't explain.
Sure.
But if it's not a defence issue, we really don't give a shit.